Nick, really interesting presentation. So thank you very much for that. And I was really intrigued by the 5 points of happiness that you drew up, which seemed really motivational factors.
Yeah.
So it made me think, actually, in the studies that you've explored, to what degree do hygiene factors have to be achieved before you can move to those motivational factors? I.e., you haven't got the money, your workplace is horrible, it's dirty, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So be fair is a hygiene factor. Effectively, it's got really well. I mean, there were other things you could think about there about having the right materials, something around the work environment, which is a hygiene factor. Put people in a building site, they're not going to be happy. Yeah. As a general rule, be fair. It doesn't have an upside. Once you've met it, it's basically what they would call technically a deficit need. That once it's met, it hasn't got an upside. All the other 4 have got strong upsides. So, but if you don't, so you want to pay off the table basically. Pay people fairly, be transparent. Collective bonuses perhaps rather than individual ones. Those sort of things, and it doesn't become an issue. Similarly, I mean, work-life balance is an interesting, fair one. I would say long hours cultures are theft. And there's lots of data to show that whatever people say, people who are working 45 hours and more a week tend to be unhappier in their whole life. Maybe not with their work. Some people choose to work longer because they actually enjoy it, but they're probably going to have external problems in their lives outside, which will start to become hygiene factors for you because a marriage will split up or something else will happen and things like that. So long hours cultures as a general rule are bad, and I would say they're unfair. So those are the sort of hygiene factors that come in.
What I thought was quite interesting, I read an article in the week, I can't remember where the source came from, but it was one of these surveys of children education levels across the world, and typically they were reporting that Britain was the lowest in all these different academic performances, or way down the scale. And then in the small print it said that the thing they never reported was that British children are the happiest.
Are the happiest?
In schools, yeah.
I haven't seen that data. Most data for Britain in Europe, where there's good data comparing schools and kids' experience of schools, puts the Britain in the middle. So typically in Europe, France, Germany, Britain will come in the middle. The happier countries, including schooling, and particularly schooling actually, is Scandinavia. They don't start school till 6 or 7, and they have a lot more play in school, and schools are really quite different. I went out with a Norwegian for a long time. She had kids in school. It was quite a different experience for her kids than my kids here in the UK. So that would be typically where I would see UK data on that. I don't know the specific one you're talking, but I would doubt that result.
No.
Yeah.
It was interesting that
Yeah.
was a measure that they hadn't reported in the press, but they'd picked up on.
Yeah.
So what do you put the happiness down to? The for the kids is the play and that freedom then?
Well, I mean, kids. Well, it's a lot about relationships, and again, it's not really very dissimilar to what I put. I mean, being able to be themselves is an important factor. I mean, actually, for our own personal happiness, physical activity is great. And actually, the fastest way out of a bad mood for anybody is physical activity. Turn the music on and dance. It doesn't have to be running. In fact, the biggest insulator for both health and happiness is walking. Walking regularly. Quite a long way, actually. Humans are probably designed from an evolutionary perspective to walk between 8 and 12 miles a day, and to just run occasionally when a predator was coming. So we actually don't often run, but we walk a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, does that follow through into work in Scandinavia?
What?
I'll give you the happiness in school, and then later on in work life. I'll give you the answer after, because I'm from Scandinavia.
Where are you from? Where are you from? Denmark, yeah. Well,
I worked in Sweden for a long time.
Denmark is, traditionally the happiest country in the world, and I believe you have a word which means work happiness. Yeah. Can you say it for me?
Hygge.
Oh well, hygge is hygge's cute, isn't it? Hygge's sort of like cozy, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, The work data, so basically the only international work data that I know very well, I know the Netherlands, I know Finland, because we've done surveys in those countries. And Finland and Netherlands are definitely happier than the UK and the USA at work. But they have their own issues. Certainly in some of the Scandinavian countries, they're really short working hours and maybe too much happiness at work sometimes.
I agree. So maybe in terms of your comparison, if you have comparison in terms of those 5, how many companies are working on those 5 in as a percentage of businesses? I mean, I don't need the data, but out of your experience.
I really can't give you a good answer to that to know how many are. I do know that my favourite company is a Dutch healthcare company called BridgeTalk. And it's a not-for-profit, and it's about community nursing. And the guy who set it up was a nurse, yeah, and he thought they were doing it all wrong, you know, and that community nurses have become sort of plumbers. You know, they were going in, doing one intervention with a patient and going out again, and then someone else was coming in and doing another intervention with them. So they did a totally different model, which is that they created these teams of about 8 to 12 nurses, and they just organised their work in their community as they wanted. They were self-organising teams. The centre of the organisation just provides support to them. So these are self-organising sort of modules with support from the centre. Coaching support, say on finances or whatever. Access to resources. And BridgeTalk employed nobody in 2006. That employs 7,000 nurses across the Netherlands. It is the dominant healthcare provider. And it's all based on that model, which is almost purely on autonomy, empowering people, connecting them, yes, supporting them, being fair, challenging them, but nursing is a challenging job anyway, inspiring them. They were already inspired by the work. Their key intervention was empowering them to do the job and shape the work they wanted to do themselves. So they hit all 5 of those beautifully, and all the examples of great places to work will be hitting those, whether they call it or not, I'm sure. Please.
Nick, I spend a lot of time in the city of London where everybody measures the living daylights out of everything. Yeah. Can you give me any inspiration? I mean, is there any possibility that you see companies measuring their performance using some form of happiness index that would be audited, for example? Is that a possibility based on what you see?
Well, if I want a successful business, it better be. But, I mean, we got a lot of interest in what we're doing. When we're literally just launching this month, this new tool. I mean, the issue really is audit sounds such a heavy word, doesn't it? And it's like we're trying to create something which is, it is measurement, but it is measurement to kickstart positive change. So it's purposeful measurement, yeah? And so I don't think audit is quite the right word. My first iteration of this I did call a wellbeing audit, yeah? And I'm sort of trying to get it into being more playful. That's why we call it mood map. But I really do think there will be a market in this because, and it won't be the measurement. The measurement will be part of it, but it will be, can you inspire people? Can you to change their behaviour so that actually they create more functional organisations? That will be, and can you do that in a way? Well, we're trying to do it in a techie way. In a sense, we're trying to create software as a service that starts to do this and draws best ideas. But people are already delivering trainings and consultancies in this space. So some of the people will call it well-being, some will call it happiness. But it definitely is coming because there's such a thirst, particularly from the younger generation. You know, they've seen the older generation not treated fantastically by employers and they want good experiences now. You know, they can't save up for a mortgage, so they're definitely going to have a job they want to enjoy. So I can't believe it won't work, but it may not be that we work, but I think someone will crack this space.
Best of luck.
Any last questions? One more down here. And then we'll be having drinks in the bar, some drinks and canapes, and we can also continue there as well. So.
Hi. So my name's Jackie. I'm from a company called House of Colour.
Yeah.
And we're a franchise network of image consultants.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at the moment is, from a company perspective, what is our purpose?
Yeah.
And because we know it's much more than looking good. It's not about what people wear and how they look. That absolutely is the key to unlock something. But what we've seen, and I've been pondering on this for several years, like what is it? What are we really achieving? Because we work with burns victims, we work with business people, we work with children, we work with recovering people, and everybody gets unlocked into something, and we've realised it's unlocking the potential of their confidence.
Yeah.
When we feel confident, we move forward. I was interested in that happiness, productivity, which one is the bigger cause. Have you ever looked at how people look comes into it? Because if we look in the mirror and see someone who looks healthy and confident, then we feel more healthy and confident, regardless of whether we felt that in the first place. Have you ever looked at that connection?
Not specifically, but there's lots of these virtuous cycles where, and also there's the opposite, there's vicious cycles, where, and it's how you get the reinforcing positive feedback loops to work, whether that is, about a mirror literally or about a metaphor of a mirror, but actually how do you get feedback loops working that actually help the positives reinforce themselves. But you obviously want a dampening feedback on the negatives. You want to dampen down the negative ones, so you need a different one for those. So that's the sort of trick of it. I mean, they definitely exist psychologically, and we experience them with people. So, when we are with, our, whatever you want to call it, what did you call it? Your special other. You called it something else, didn't you? Significant other. When you're with the person you love, basically, or you're with someone that you love, we get this very quick positive reinforcing feedback loop that goes that you see them, you smile, and like you're both suddenly really happy because you're seeing each other. And that's a real-time positive resonance of emotions between you. And similarly, you can, if you see someone that you don't like, you have a sort of recoil thing where you're trying to move away from the negative threat. So these things happen very naturally in us. But we also, as all of us know, we all have our troubles. We all have our, our wounds in life by the time we've got any age over, well, kids get them anyway. But there's your psychological wounds, and we can get stuck in bad patterns for sure, things that are not healthy for us, and our confidence can erode, and we can tell ourselves, ridiculous negative messages that we wouldn't tell anyone else. Yeah. We tell them ourselves. So there are patterns to be broken here, and there are patterns to be reinforced. Okay,
and then have you worked with investors and people at all?
I haven't worked with investors and people, no.
Because we hold the Investors and People Award, and it's really important for us because people are at the heart, and they keep trying to persuade us to take on their health and well-being, and we haven't looked into it seriously at the moment. We're not at that point, but from the bit I've heard, there may be some. Yeah, we're sort of on our list of things to do.
I mean, at the moment we're in a proof of concept phase of a startup, where you're trying to work closely with some clients because we need investment later this year. So we're much more about how do we actually prove that this works, and then we will try and scale later, hopefully.
Cool. I'll speak to you later. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Nick.
You're welcome.